Hello and welcome to Troubleshooting Your Design, part of the Design Fundamentals course on Tuts Plus. I'm Ben Gribbin, and today what we're going to be doing is looking at troubleshooting a design. And we're going to be doing that from two perspectives. We're going to look at it from giving feedback as a designer, and also as being given feedback, say from a client or a fellow designer. So, do you ever look at a design and wonder why it doesn't really work? And it could be one of your designs, it could be another one. Perhaps you've been asked to just give feedback on a design of somebody else's. What we're going to do today is specifically look at troubleshooting design, covering some feedback that you could receive or give and what it actually means. So I'm going to look at four levels first of the amount of work you're going to need to do on a design. And what I've called them is refinement and polish, tweaking, reworking, or redoing. And those are in ascending order, so redoing is basically the most amount of work, refinement and polish is your least. So let's think about refinement and polish first. If I ever have to give feedback to somebody, often I will say, your design needs some refinement or polish. And most people think, oh, I need to make it shiny. I don't mean that kind of polish. You need to go over the little details, because you can have an amazing design, but if you were a bit sloppy with, especially in Photoshop, it's quite easy to just not align things, or perhaps have little paragraphs that are 1 or 2 pixels off being properly positioned. Then those little things all add up. And also, if you've got like subheadings that are all different sizes, or gaps that are slightly larger on paragraphs to header tags, that kind of thing, anything like that, you need to kind of polish it out with your work and just really work over the final details. Perhaps you choose to work quite sloppily till you've got design out there, but then you do need to go over and refine it and polish it. So then we'll look at tweaking. Now, I'd say tweaking is little changes, just little things. Perhaps maybe changing the font of your typeface, of your headers, or your body text, or just going through and slightly altering the colour just 1 or 2 levels up. That kind of stuff, just really basic, easy and quick things to do. Then reworking is a little bit more involved. It might be several changes at once, and moving things around. And obviously if you're working with like Photoshop or Illustrator, particularly on web designs, you're then going to have to readjust a whole load of other stuff. And then finally, redoing, which is basically where the design is at a level where actually it's just not very good at all, and it just needs starting again, but with more of a focused, project-based goal in mind. So those are 4 levels. And if I was ever giving anybody feedback, I'd say, right, I think you need to refine and polish it, or I think you need to tweak it a little bit, or I think you just need to redo it. And the best thing is, if you're being given feedback, ask people to be honest. If you're giving it, be honest. Don't say, oh, yeah, you can change this and this and this. If you feel a design is not good enough and actually it's just not salvageable, tell the person. Be absolutely straight up and honest. And that goes with your own designs. If you look at it and think, actually, I can't see any way of being able to change this, or if somebody says, I'm sorry, we can't do anything with this, start again. That's usually the best way to save time. Rather than messing about with the design and just dragging it along, it's going to waste your time, and you're going to spend or waste money as well. So let's look at some specific kind of keywords that you could use or be given regarding troubleshooting a design. And you can use these if you think this design is just not quite working in my head. You can use these to hopefully try and troubleshoot it a bit. So let's have a look at heavy. Now, a lot of the words you use when describing design, the kind of concepts or what I'd call blue sky thinking. So you've got things like the word heavy. Oh, it's a heavy design. What does that mean? Well, a heavy design is one that feels just heavy. When you look at it, it's really compact. Everything's squashed together. All the elements are like thrown in there. It's all tightly packed. There's not very good use of white space. So then these kind of words chained together. If something was heavy, I'd suggest somebody starts to use white space more, work on their proximity, tweak and refine the design to make it less heavy, perhaps using more lightweight fonts. So that's what I'd say for heavy. Cluttered, again, kind of related to heavy. Cluttered is just when I think there's too much stuff in a design and it's just jam-packed full of stuff. You want to make your designs as simple and effective as possible. Now, it doesn't mean you can't go for a very complicated, involved design, but if something's cluttered, i.e. it's just got way too much stuff in there, you need to work it over. Let's think about that practically. Well, some customers try to save money by perhaps say they want you to design a flyer for them and they literally ask you to put everything on that flyer. They want effectively a website putting on the flyer. They want promotions putting on that flyer. They want new products, they want news, they want contact details, all putting onto one single sheet of paper, and it just becomes a bit cluttered. So that's going to be something maybe that you have to work over with your client. You might have to say, this design is too cluttered, we need to simplify it. And then conversely, I think sometimes designs can be too simple. And we're not on about minimalism. Minimalism is, when done properly, brilliant. It conveys a message, it gives a real extra meaning to a design. But if something's too simple, i.e. it looks like somebody's done it in Microsoft Word or Publisher, it needs sorting out. Simple, low-grade, unprofessional designs, they just don't work, and there's not really a place for them. So thinking about that, what can you do to make something less simple or to make it basically look more designed? And that's just going to be basic stuff like thinking about your typefaces, using different typefaces that aren't standard system fonts, perhaps going over the things like alignment, the complexity of the design. And speaking of complexity, sometimes a design is too complicated. And like cluttered, you can have too much information. You can also have too much design. If the design gets in the way of the message, then really it's not a very good design. So you need to make sure that your design is not simple, so it looks like somebody who's never worked in design has done it, but also not too complex, so it looks like somebody who's just learned design and wants to show off has done it. You want to make it appropriate to your audience. You want to make sure that if something's complex, there's a real good reason for it to be. So for example, things like grunge styles often require things to be quite complex in their appearance. And in places it's appropriate, but generally it's something that just has too much design elements in it, has too many elements and styles and themes. It just looks overly done. Work on making the overall style of a file unified. That's something that really does add professionalism to your file. You don't want to have a grungy, polished Web 2 style and then also have vintage elements and gothic elements all chucked into the same design, because it's just going to look a mess. On the other hand though, you don't want a design that's generic. Generic design is dull. So if you're thinking, this design's okay, but I don't know, there's something not quite right with it, it might be that it's generic. So take a look at it and think, is this actually something that I've seen a lot before? Is this something that's done over and over and over? Have I not really thought out of the box? Perhaps you've been a little bit too safe. If something's generic, you need to work on making it more unique. So look at how perhaps you could tweak the style. Typefaces, again, are an excellent way of just changing the look of something instantly. Work on things like contrast. Perhaps you could change the colour palette. Just look at different things you could do to make it more unique. Then, is something too light or too dark? And this could be something, yes, that makes your design look bad, but also it could be something that affects legibility. For example, on the internet or when printed, sometimes if something's too light, you've used too thin or lightweight a font, or you've used too heavy and too bold a font, words can become illegible, and the overall design can just look too dark. You don't want something to look like pitch black. You want it to be effectively designed. You want it to show some skill. So make sure something isn't overly contrasted or under contrasted, just as you would with a photograph or something along those lines. And then finally, typeface selection. Something that really annoys me personally, but also something that could really affect your design, is poor typeface selection. Using system fonts, yes, things like Helvetica and such, but the use of Comic Sans is absolutely lambasted around the internet. So Comic Sans does have a place. Comic Sans is a really fun, quirky font, really suited to like kids flyers, to fun sort of things, but using those kind of fonts in the wrong place isn't going to work. It's not going to add anything to your design. So look at your typeface and consider, is it the typeface that's letting my design down? You know, could I perhaps use a premium font, or even just a font from websites like Dafont or MyFont or Font Squirrel? They all have some really, really powerful typefaces that are often free or really low price. So look perhaps at choosing some different typefaces and working in those just to make your design look a lot more unique and polished. So now we've looked at some specifics for feedback or questions you could ask yourself to improve your design. Let's think about how you can actually get feedback. Unfortunately, the internet is full of websites where you can actually just go along and get feedback from other designers. Now, we've just picked out one or two. There's Please Critique Me. I believe it's free, and if you just go ahead and submit a link there, they critique your designs. They do publish it on the web, which might be a problem for some people. There's some premium services you can pay for, and of course, you've even got the option when you're designing to ask everybody you know. And as long as you put the design feedback in place, then you should be okay. And what I mean by that is, if you go ahead and ask your boss, who's never done design, who owns a bright green car, you need to consider that his design opinions may be flawed. And I'm not saying that to stereotype people, but generally people who are into design like things to be flashy and lots of information and very powerful. So get some feedback. Ask people to be deadly honest, but when you're getting the feedback, make sure you put it in perspective. So the best people you're going to be for asking feedback on your designs is other designers. Ask them to be honest. They're not going to lie to you, and they will be able to offer you some real technical, insightful kind of input into the feedback they're giving, rather than just saying, oh, I don't like that colour, and not giving you a reason. And that's something that's important. Always make sure you get a reason off somebody. If somebody says, I don't like this, ask them, well, why don't you like this? Because it could just be their personal opinion. And in that case, sometimes opinions aren't the same as others. Nobody has the same opinion. Whilst nobody's opinion is wrong, you do need to make sure that actually you think about whether it's really a valid input of feedback. So today what we've done is we've looked at feedback that you can give, some keywords, the kind of depth of revisions you can make or troubleshooting you could make to your design, and also we've considered some kind of specifics, questions you could ask yourself if you think this design isn't really working, and also that you could give to other designers who might ask for your feedback on a project. So your assignment for next time is to get feedback on your latest project and see whether it could be incorporated into your design to improve it or further the design. Next time on Design Fundamentals, we'll be looking at design something, places and ways to practice your skill.